for having me again. In the correct, this is Greeks and the original verses here in the world. We're gonna talk to 150 today on, and then we're gonna touch on a lead dot. So let's get it for being here. The Canaanland Morris. Here we go.
Yeah, they're killing it still, bro. It's crazy.
Again, the Kefti, the Cretan, whom I read to the people educated and civil. And the foreign person.
That's crazy.
All the books and the there's just said about the North civilization through this and things. Now, there are people from known today. So how live I? Thousands be they made and said what they live, you know, what makes all kept on travel and the people and they came down. See you out of and it's a
Yeah, it's still doing it, yo. Yeah, it's just doing that thing still. You want to try IG? Hey, KTS? You can play it from your you can play it from your phone on IG.
Not me.
Yeah, this thing's tripping. Can't even hear you now. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Good day. Thank you for calling to help them.
That's nuts. Yeah, they gotta try, I guess. No, they do. They gotta try. Right? Tsunamis and all this stuff, and then what happened? What happened? How come everybody's talking about the tsunamis? What happened, yo? What happened? What don't they want us to know? It's Pale History Month. They should be down with this. They should be down with this. Talk about Greeks and stuff. Talk about Greeks. Like what? How is this not qualify for Black History Month if black means pale? What's the problem? What is the issue? Should there be an issue? Like, why would his stuff not work? All the other times we did stuff, there's no problem. Playing off other stuff with no problem. So you start talking about tsunamis. You have problems. You know exactly what they're doing. Exactly what they're doing. All right. So we're gonna try on IG. So everybody go over to IG. This is the riot. This is the march and picket right here. Oh yeah, they're stopping us from whatever. Okay, let's go down to the wherever. Let's go yell at the windows there. Let's go. Let's do a black thing. So we're all going over to IG. We're just down there. When you get to the stop sign, hang on right, and then keep going, and then you'll see IG right there. It's big. You can't miss it. And just go to the Canaanland Moors on IG, and we'll catch up with you over there. Islam to all the wars. See what we got to go through. Hopefully these stay up so the people can see what we have to go through. This is what we have to go through just to get some information to you ungrateful people. But we're still going to do it for you. We're moving over to IG. We're moving over to IG. All right? We're moving over to IG. Let's see how bad the service is on IG. That service was bad. That service was bad. I don't know what was going on. But that service was bad. That service was bad over there. So let's see what's going on. Peace, fam.
Peace, Mark.
Oh, look at that. You're clear.
Oh yeah, what a surprise.
You're clear.
You know what? It's better here anyway. I never liked YouTube back, so they always mess around.
Yeah.
And they can't stop it now. So today we're presenting the Canaanland Moors presenting the correcting Black history with the original verses, the Kemet versus Greece and the rest of the world. So we're gonna go back 150,000 or so years. We're gonna right to the present day and bring it right to today. We're gonna touch on a couple of really just key dots and to let you guys connect the dots because it's a lot of information. So and we're gonna focus mostly on Kemet and versus Greece, and then you'll see why. We're gonna talk about phenotypes. We're gonna talk about race, the color black. We're gonna talk about Atlantis. We're going to talk about origins and the Olmecs and the Moors, of course. So let's get into it. Give thanks to the Canaanland Moors again for having me here. First Tuesday of every month. Here we go.
At this clock. Okay. Let's begin with the African people, the Castile, known as the Cretans or Cretans, who my research has shown to be the people who first educated the Greeks in their lessons in civilization during the early second millennium BC. And before we proceed, I'd like to point out the fact that when you look through the college textbooks and all the books in ancient history, there's very little that is said about the Cretans in the Northern civilization, the Castile. And once we go through this little lesson today, you'll understand exactly why. Now, the Cretans, who are they? They are people that came from the area that's known today as Kenya. Somewhere down here in East Africa, and about 4,000 BC, they made their way up and settled here in what is today Libya. Sais, where they worship the mother god, the snakes, along with the people who mix in with the blacks of Sumer over here. They kept you. Later on, traveled to the island of Crete, and the other people, became the Akan people. When the Holocaust came, they came down to West Africa. But around 4000 BC, the Keftiu came and traveled to the island that is now called Crete and established a phenomenal civilization. And these are the people who in ancient times controlled the entire Mediterranean Sea. They were phenomenal sailors. Okay? And then from this island, they control Athens and mainland Greece during the period of 4000 BC to about 1500 BC.
So before we just continue real quickly, so you notice that Crete was populated with a high civilization, 4,000+ years BC, already had a high civilization, and then quote unquote Indo-Aryans and so on came down into acknowledge and saw the high civilization and were subordinate to them. Okay, and keep in mind, he spoke about Cretan and he spoke of Minoan civilization. That if you remember the last few classes, the last few presentations, we spoke on Minoan and the Kalymnos and certain islands that I come from, and the certain islands in that area of Minoan, which were all wars. So, and then look at this architecture now. See how, okay, this is on Crete.
Here's a view of the Keftiu Palace, the Palace of Knossos. Many books try to make you believe that this was, early prehistoric Greek achievement. This is just simply one of many palaces. Phenomenal. Look at this. Let's talk about the original Greeks. The first people who became Greeks were Aryans, who were called the Aeolians and Ionians. They came into what is now known as Greece, worshipping the Hindu trinity, Indra, Mitra, and Varuna, and settled in Thessaly and central Greece. There they found a people who were infinitely more powerful and accomplished than them, the Keftiu, the Cretans, the Africans from East Africa, what is Kenya today. So they became vassals to the Africans.
Okay, so this is what I was just talking about now. This other race of people came into what is known as Greece and what are referred to Greeks, and there was already high civilization there. Okay, this is what I was just saying, just a little bit ahead of the video.
The Africans had much to teach them. And also the Africans, the Cretans, or Keftiu, exported their civilization to Athens and the Peloponnese. Now you go to school and we talk about Hellenic civilization. Helen or Hellene is a name that's given to the Greeks. Now Helen was the son of Deucalion, and his name was derived from Helen or Selene, which are all names for the mother goddess of the Cretans. The Cretans or the Keftiu were a matriarchal civilization, and God was a woman in those days with these African people. Now, Helen was name given to the royal deputy, to the high priestess of Selene, meaning that when the Aeolians and the Ionians came to central Greece and Thessaly, they began to study religion with the high priestesses of the mother goddess. And the Greek deputy, royal deputy to the high priestess was called Helen. And this is where we get the name Hellenic civilization from. Galatia was the name that the Africans gave to those Greeks, those Aryans people who worship the mother goddess Crone, the earth goddess of the Cretans. And Gracia, of course, eventually became Grecia or Greece. So the word Grecia is an African word. And they are using it to this day. So who were the Cretans? You know, the first evidence we have for the Cretans, okay? We have the tomb of Menke Peresend, 15th century BC, from Thebes, the Amenoks. And here we have Cretans. These are the black people. You see them here. This is a bibliographical reference. And along interspersed with them, we have some white people who are Syrians. And we see that the Africans, the Caspians, the Cretans, you never see this clearly shown to you in European books. You notice that they have the same kind of, wear the same kind of garments as the Egyptian men. You see that? Because it's an African style, whereas the Syrians are all robed up because they cannot stand the sun. They might get skin cancer. And here we have, again, another version of the procession, and we can see that these are clearly African people. The Olympics. When we delve into our history, we find that the Cretans, the Caspians, these East Africaners, used to have sports as the preliminary to their major annual religious ceremonies. They had boxing, bullfighting, wrestling, races, and so on. This is where the Olympics came from. A celebration that the Caspian initiated the Greeks into. In the Palace of Knossos, there are frescoes. They have, these are painted in the palaces. And here we have, of course, the white woman, have white people here, and a black person, meaning that we see that in the Cretan world and the early Greek world, the blacks and the whites intermingle. You see that? So these are white people partaking in the ceremonies that were taught to them by the African people. I'd like to point out to you that the man who discovered Crete, a man by the name of Charles Evans, he retouched the paintings to make them look like modern European frescoes.
Okay, so I'm going to pause that real quick. We were speaking earlier to the GS. Cujo was talking about, I believe it was his niece or a young lady who was in school, and they were showing them ancient Egyptian, they were showing them ancient Egyptian pictures, and they were showing them that they were whitewashed and that they were pale skinned. So here is why. One reason why is because they actually retouched them. And that's part of the theme of this is correcting quote unquote Black history and correcting Kemetic history. Okay.
Because he wanted to remove the African style of the paintings. And this has been very well documented historically by researchers, but you will not find this information in your popular books on ancient history. also taught the Greeks agriculture. They taught them how to grow olive grapes. But the Greeks, they always were herdsmen. You know, the nomadic people. They knew nothing about agriculture when it first came down for the subjects. They were taught seafarers. That's how, the Greeks who were nomadic herdsmen became masters of the seas later on. They were taught religion. When they served the African mother goddess, Selene and Kron and so on. And they were initiated into the Luthinian initiation system by the Cretans. Mystery system that shrouded in a lot of mystery because they don't want you to know that these were African people that gave the Greeks the Luthinian mystery system. As a matter of fact, a lot of so-called Greek mythology, all the goddesses which have been demonized in Greek mythology and given a subservient position to the Greek gods, the male divine figures in the mythology, were really the high divine goddesses of the African people. Once the Greeks took over, and we talk about how they took over later on, they demoted the goddesses and raised up Zeus and Hercules and so on and so forth.
Okay, so once again, to reiterate that we honor the matriarch and why we honor the matriarch and how our original systems honor the matriarch or goddesses, goddesses, and how it changed. Okay, can't be understated. Cannot be overstated, rather.
These nomadic people were taught architecture, and there's linear B writing of the African people. They were using linear B, 6,000 years ago. These African people from East Africa, this actually developed writing. And for over 1,000 years, the Cretans tried to teach the Greeks how to use their writing system so that they could create a writing system for their language, and the Greeks were not able to achieve the task. Yet we are told that the Greeks somehow possessed this great mind and started a great knowledge explosion. Wow.
Correcting Kemetic history. Kemet versus Greece right there. So you see that what we know is the alphabet today came from Kemet.
Okay. This is a topic that we need to have another lecture on. Crete is Atlantis.
Okay. So you said that's something you have to have a whole other lecture on. So this is where I'm going to pause it and I'm going to read a little bit about Atlantis and what Crete and how Crete is Atlantis and what that means. And then we're also going to, just before I get into that, I want to touch on the word black that he keeps using directly from his books. And it's from a couple of other sources. So first we're going to read out of this one here. It's called Not Out of Greece. Sorry. I can do here. Not Out of Greece by Roger Perman. So we're going to read out of that. I believe it's page. I'll let you know in a minute. Okay. And then we're going to read out of this as well. So from Egypt to Greece. Okay. So read out of that as well. That is by Moanta Ashman. Okay. So we're going to talk about the word black in a whole different context. Okay. Let's begin by noting the context. I'm sorry.
Oh, just because you paused right there, could you say those two books again?
Yeah. Not Out of Greece by Ryan the Pyramid. We're going to go over all the books at the end again.
All right,
show
cool.
all the books. Yeah. These are the two I'm reading out of right now. And we'll go over, I'll show all the books at the end that we used. Okay. There you go. Okay. Yet the Egyptians did not call themselves black people, quote unquote black people or quote unquote Negroes. Did not. From the Latin negro, meaning black. The word they used to denote themselves was camel. It is compounded of cam, meaning black, whose determinative is the black scale of the crocodile, and au, au, the word denoting themselves, camel. Cam is the root of such words as kamit, meaning black land, and kami, to be black. In the phrase for books of the black land, Budge translate kamit as the black land in the sense of land of black. The word cam and kamit are used consistently to indicate black things. Incidentally, as far as I know, the ancient Egyptians are the only people in history. Okay, listen to this. This is the key right here. So he explains what it means, and I was going to show you. The ancient Egyptians are the only people in history to refer to themselves as black people, or quote unquote, as they would say here, Negroes. Even though the Cushites and Ethiopians were darker due to the greater heat in their country, Egyptians never referred to them as black people. It is important to note that the word Kemet, with a K-E instead of Kemet, that many are in habit of using, as well as Egyptians, and Egypt has no such meaning in the Egyptian language. So Kem, and people say, oh, chemistry, and that has zero meaning. It's Kam, K-A-M. Neither is it related to alchemy, as I was just saying, which is a word derived from the Arabic language. The use of the word Kemet for Egypt, and Egypt as well, in place of its own name, Kemet, plays into the hands of the people that are trying to deny the quote-unquote blackness of the Egyptians. So there's a lot of points in there that I'm sure Cujo would like to talk on, but maybe another time. I'm not sure if he's going to chime in or not.
Oh no, you go in, bro. Go in.
but okay, so there you're here. Okay, I didn't know if you were.
Oh yeah, no, we got the YouTube going too. Yeah, I'm in the chat.
You not even. Sorry.
No, I got the YouTube going too at the same time, so I'm in the chat.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you see how in ancient Egypt, even though the Cushites and the Ethiopians were darker skinned, they were never referred to as black people. Black is Kam, K-H-A-M, and it's specific to Egypt. And the meaning of what black actually means is a lot different. And the Egyptians themselves did not refer to them as quote unquote black people. They were Kam. And they were the only people in the history of the world to ever use the word black until now as we know it and what it means. So this helps support the theme that I've been hearing a lot in regard and coming from you, and it's in general the word black being used nowadays and what it means and how people try to add so much to it, but what it actually means. Anyways, you can touch on that another time.
Yes.
But this is straight from the horse's mouth.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so that's the first thing in regards to the word black. Now, second thing I want to touch on here, and this is from the same book. We're going to start here by saying, let's begin by noting the controversy over the word race. It has been used as the chief word for indicating the large categories of men, that there are differences between men that can be and has been categorized into 4 major groups cannot be disputed. In response to how the human brain recognizes types of anything, distinguishes them and categorizes them, it is a natural and necessary to coin terms for labeling the distinctions made. Let's imagine a group of 1,000 persons that are asked to separate 4,000 people that are composed of 1,000 each of distinctly Africans, Europeans, Asians, and Orientals. We can expect them to carry out the task with 100% accuracy. If the people in our experiment were uneducated, they would conclude that they separated the 4,000 according to their quote-unquote race, while an educated person would say phenotype. Maybe one person might get stuck on the idea that there is no such thing as race and would not be able to carry out the task. Phenotype would be the accurate term, but the word race would be inaccurate only because the manner in which it has been defined and used. The word phenotype also has its drawbacks because it fails to take into account that there are internal factors that make for the uniqueness of traits that distinguish the phenotype, or what people are saying, the race of others. The word phenotype must take into account the internal cause and just not the external manifestations of differences. We are, of course, speaking of genes. So they're speaking about genetics. Okay. So it's blowing out the whole concept of black, white, and then the whole idea of race. It's just blowing it out with like just pure knowledge and pure science. Okay. So now the definition of phenotype: the observable physical or biochemical characteristics of an organism as determined by both genetic makeup and environmental influences. So genetic again. The expression of a specific trait, such as stature or blood type, based on genetic and environmental influences. An individual or group of organisms exhibiting a particular phenotype. And as the author just said, one thing that phenotype does fail to acknowledge is the internal workings that happened before these physical observances occur. Okay, so I wanted to put into context the race, the word black, and how it's used, and how in ancient times, as we just saw now, how quote unquote black and white, how there was no such thing as race, and it's all based on phenotype. And the word black was only used by Camites, very specific to them. It had nothing to do. It had a small part to do with their skin, because the people south of them, the Ethiopians and the Cushites, were a lot darker skin, and they were not referred to by the same name. So the skin was a factor, but it referred to the skin and their beliefs, their cosmogony, their so many other aspects. Okay. So now that being said, we're going to jump back into Crete and Atlantis. So now I'm going to read out of this book here. Okay. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean. Okay. Oops, sorry.
That was kind of trippy. That was kind of trippy just now because I wasn't looking at the thing, and when you said it, I looked and the eye was looking at me.
So now he's saying Crete and Atlantis. So I'm just going to read out of that book for now, and we'll see. So the history of the tablets, translated in the following pages, is strange and beyond the belief of modern scientists. Their antiquity is stupendous, dating back some 36,000 years BC. The writer is Thoth, or Jehuti is the proper name, an Atlantean priest king who founded a colony in ancient Egypt after the sinking of the mother country. He was the builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, erroneously attributed to Cheops. In it, he incorporated his knowledge of the ancient wisdom Sorry, one second. He was the builder of the Great Pyramids of Giza, erroneously attributed to Cheops. In it, he incorporated his knowledge of the ancient wisdom, and also securely secreted records and instruments of ancient Atlantis. For some 16,000 years, he ruled the ancient race of Egypt from approximately 50,000 BC to 36,000 BC. At that time, the ancient barbarous race, among which he and his followers had settled and had raised to high degree of civilization, Thoth was an immortal. That is, he had conquered death, passing only when he willed, and even then, not through death. His vast wisdom made him, check this out now, ruler over the various Atlantean colonies, including ones in South and Central America. So you see how everything starts to connect. Okay. When the time he came for him to leave Egypt, he erected the Great Pyramid over the entrance of the Great Halls of Amenti. Okay, don't want to get too deep into it, but that was the main point. We're talking about Atlantis, Thoth or Jehuti, and how he colonized and civilized right to here, South Central America. Okay,
and also too to put the reference point of the Moabites and whoever getting permission from the pharaohs of Egypt.
Yeah,
and the whole transfer of the power, that Egypt wasn't only over there. Egypt was also over here through Atlantis. So as soon as the scholars start talking about, that's why you hear about everybody else. You wouldn't hear about Ra and Ephraim and like that.
No.
Because when you start talking about the history of Atlantis and the history of the Americas, you're going to older stuff than over there across the Atlantic.
Yes, exactly.
You're talking about an older paradigm. That the paradigm that people are calling the oldest paradigm took their stuff from the one before it. And also make reference that the ancient Egyptians are North Africans. The ancient Egyptians are North Africans. Right? That idea of coming across to the west from ancient Egypt, which is way on the other side, lets you know how vast the empire was and how much jurisdiction we had.
Mm-hmm.
That was our terrain to go whenever we choose. You don't need any passport and all that stuff. You don't need license and you don't need certain things. So part of this is when we're saying correcting Pale History Month, black means pale. It's about correcting the perspectives that we have as what history is. That they would never tell you. They would never tell you that thought Tahuti had colonies in the Americas. Why did they tell you that Tahuti had colonies in the Americas? Why do you hear Memphis, Tennessee, and bells aren't ringing in your head? Well, hold on a second. Well, how is there Memphis over here? Because over here is Egypt too. That's just what it is. It's nothing to debate. It's nothing to argue about. If Egyptians had colonies in the Americas, then the Americas must be Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
If people are going to get permission to be in America, but they're going to go to the Sultan of Morocco to get the permission to be in America, obviously America is Morocco. And all of that is North Africa. And then people are going to tell you about some Indians and black Indians and tribes of people and all these different little things, which are, yeah, we're that, but that's not who ruled the Western Hemisphere. You know, Indians running around here ruled nothing. No Indians built buildings around here. But it hit me when he was talking about the Atlantis and the connection to the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The connection to the Egyptians. Right? The connection to the Egyptians. Not, you know, they just happened to just bump into over here or whatever. No, they had colonies here. Peace, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just to keep supporting that so much. Okay. First things first. Okay. The Yamasee are direct descendants of the Olmecs through the Washita Moors. So basically, you picked up on the next sentence I was going to say. The Yamasee Moors resided in Georgia I'm reading out of First World Order.
Oh yeah, and then a more in the chat on YouTube just said Google Egypt, Georgia.
Absolutely, and we're gonna get into some names right now. Like you said, Memphis. I'm gonna give the definitions of some of these right now. So, the Moors called by the name Yamasee, from the Arabic Yamasi, which means they are anointed. We're one group. They're all one group. We're all one. Okay. Next thing here.
Okay. So we're going to go over some of the words like you were saying earlier. Memphis. Well, Memphis means men patah in Kama. Right? Okay, men patah. And if you knew Patah had the longest reign in Kemet. Okay, we're going to get into that one too. Patah had the longest reign in Kemet. I believe it was 18,000 years. Okay, Utah is a group of other gods with hidden arms. Missouri is Mezura, royal son, or son of the sun god, Moses' son. Alabama is Allah Mba, the presence of Allah. Mississippi is Isis City, the shrine of Isis. Texas, Chasu, the seven divine masters of wisdom. Chahuti, same concept, coming from the form of from Chahuti, Jahuti, were the seven universal laws. So you see them? Okay. Iowa, Ayawa, Jah the Great. Minnesota, Mena or Menes, first Egyptian king of the first dynasty, composed with Sata, Men Sata or Menasa. Manhattan, Min Aten. I have composed this plausible definition from the name of the Egyptian god of fertility, Min, and Aten, prefix, which means variously as island, land, canal, domain, district, region, the Aten of Min, the island of the fertility of God, which is Manhattan. Tennessee, Tainus, Sa, protectors of Tanis. Memphis, as I said before, Men Patah. Tallahassee, Ta, Allah, Hasi, Allah will conquer. Nebraska, Neb, Lord, Ras, Ra, Ska, the word of God. There's so many of these. I could keep going, but right down Philadelphia. Another thing I wanted to say with the word Cam, it's also Ham, as in for the Israelites, for Hebrew Israelites, same thing. Okay, so that's, let's see here. Another thing here. Okay, actually, we're gonna keep going here. So now he mentioned Crete being Atlantis. I wanted to talk on the word black. I wanted to talk on race and talk about a little bit of Atlantis and the connection. So now we're gonna get back into the video.
Last year, archaeologists verified that Crete and many islands in that area were destroyed by huge tsunami. In the days of Herodotus, the Greeks thought that, what is today just, Spain and Portugal, no further west than that, and Morocco and Tunisia, and then the East, the Middle East, and Lower Egypt, Northern Egypt. They thought that was the entire world. So the Greek idea of Atlantis would not go into the Atlantic Ocean. There was no knowledge of the Atlantic Ocean when the Greeks, when Plato and Solon spoke about Atlantis. They did not know that there was a world beyond the Mediterranean. So that's the confusion that we have in our minds today, that, when the Greeks first spoke of Atlantis, that they perhaps were referring to some continent or subcontinent island and what we know today as Atlantis. But you see that in those days, they were speaking about an island that was in the Mediterranean. That's the furthest knowledge of the expanse of the world. And archaeologists last year documented, because they found seashells and other types of marine, fossils, 30,000 on mountain tops, 30,000 feet above sea level. Okay, I'm sorry, 13,000 feet above sea level. So how could you get seashell that high on the top of the mountain? It was a huge tsunami spawned by the earthquake that devastated Terra. But we talk about that later on. Okay, let's get into what historians claim to be the starting point of the first explosion in human intellectual history. It starts with Thales of Miletus, 605 BCE. Now, he did not write in the book. This is what, the word has come down, that he went to Egypt, 605 BCE, and the Egyptians had, by then, built over 100 pyramids, and all kind of astronomical knowledge, mathematics and geometry and science and medicine. And they claim that he blew the mind of the Egyptians because he was able to calculate the height of a pyramid from the shadow cast by the sun. Now, when we go into the Ames Papyrus, written in 1650 BCE, meaning 1,000 years before Miletus, and the papyrus is recording knowledge that goes even before that, there are many examples of problems given to school children in Egypt on how to find, such information. Interesting. Now, Thales of Miletus was a salesman. He wasn't a scholar. There were no schools of mathematics or science in Greece in the year 625 BCE. As a matter of fact, the first schools began with Plato, many centuries later. So where would Thales have gotten his knowledge, if he got the knowledge on how to do that? Well, he traveled in Egypt, Greece, Samaria, and so on. It's very simple. Do the math. And they said that Thales supposedly initiated the Greek, liberation of the mind from religion, meaning that, our Western scholars try to make us believe that it was religion that fettered the minds of people, and it, held back science, even though, for the beginning of Egyptian history, we are told that the fundamental motto of Ma'at is that to know truth, you must live it, meaning that before you consider something the truth, you must prove it by experimentation, by living it. That's meaning observation, experimentation. To know truth, you must live it.
Oh, quick pause right there.
For now.
So that's part of, again, going back to the teachings of once you get into nationality and birthrights, that it's about doing something with the information, not just hoarding it. Actually applying the information. If you learn about some herbs or something, you should probably be drinking those. It won't hurt to probably drink those.
And you can't be a herbalist unless you've done that.
Right. But just to stress that point of applying the information.
Yeah.
Right. If the information is not being applied, it's just collection of data. You're just hoarding, just an information hoarder.
In supporting the point of being active,
right?
Because active doesn't mean you're running around mindless.
Right.
You're applying the knowledge. You're learning by being active. You're actually becoming wise, and that's the only way you can even teach is by practicing. You can't. You're saying you learn about a herb, you take it, you learn about it, you practice it, then you can teach someone about it. How can you teach someone about a herb that you haven't even taken or practiced?
Right.
Yeah, man. Good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. You can carry on.
Yeah, one other thing really quickly on when we were talking about phenotypes and stuff, I wanted to touch on this thing again about race, like a point of understanding, like what is it that distinguishes one culture from the other? What factors determine whether or not a cultural factor is borrowed by one group or another? And what criteria determines that a culture is not simply influenced, but is actually a part of another culture? I stated. So anyways, so just talking a little bit about phenotype again. And there's 5 points here. Contact, so evidence of prior contact in relationships. Ethnicity, both groups matching in their ethnic background. Myth, synchronism, so the myths connect. Philosophical synchronism, so the philosophies behind all of the myth and what have you. And then rituals and traditions. So what's interesting about that is just showing the connection again from Kemet into the Americas. And as you were saying, there was so much before the pyramids. There was mounds. I think there's thousands up to Canada, right up to here. Yeah. There's mounds in Scarborough. Okay, so people don't know there's mounds in Scarborough that are probably as old or older than the pyramid, and all across America, North, South, Central America. And the mounds are based on the same geometrical math, like the math and the science of the pyramids. Same exact knowledge. Okay, so I want to keep going.
Yeah.
On the fundamental rules of science. So how could Thales have predicted an eclipse when there were no schools of astronomy and mathematics in Greece? Maybe in his travel he got it from the Persians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians. I mean, it's very simple to understand. And then when, of course, to his Greek fellow man, it was phenomenal. I mean, he said an eclipse will take place on this date, and it took place, and it happened. He sacrificed 100 oxen. A practice continued throughout the entire history of Greece. Is that religious or not? Well, it's not religious, it's superstitious.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let us see now how well the Greeks understood mathematics and science. We know that logical thinking is a foundation of mathematics and of science. Meaning that if you cannot reason logically, you cannot practice mathematics or science. This is the nugget. This is the essential point. We don't have to, base our conclusions on what Ron Nephemet is saying or Professor Van Doren or anybody. Let's find out how well the Greeks understood logic. Now, there are two processes in logic: deduction and induction. We deduct when we have a law, and then we find that's deduction. Even that if you know the law that governs energy, meaning E equals mc squared, you can find the energy of things and you can deduct the energy value of any specific thing using that law. Induction is going from specifics to law, meaning you observe things in this world, you note the similarities, and once you are sure that there are no deviations, there's no disability on the principle, then you have law. For example, in E equals mc squared, if I'm given m, meaning I know the mass of something, let's say the mass of something is 4, and I'm given the speed at which it is traveling, 20 miles per hour. So if I multiply the mass 4 by the speed, the square of the speed, meaning c squared, then I can find its energy value. Any schoolboy can do that. Any schoolboy, starting out maybe about 9th grade, 10th grade math, whatever, if you give them this formula, if I give them mass, instead of multiply it by, the speed squared, they can find energy. Once they understand that, they can solve, any number of specific problems that requires this law. That's deduction. School children can do it. They do it all the time. What does it take to induct, to figure out? Einstein, who figured out that the energy of something was its mass times the square on the speed at which it is traveling, was called a genius. No matter superior intelligence. Because who could, how many people can figure that out? That, take something, the speed of it, square it, and then multiply by mass, and give its energy. Here we have any number of school children, about a million, finding the energy of something using the law, but only one man could figure out how to find that law. So we can understand that every law of science in chemistry, physics, biology, in mathematics, the square of the area of the square, the area of the triangle. We go to school and we're given the formula, and we can deduct the area of a triangle, the circumference of a circle, the perimeter of a square or trapezoid or whatever. But how many people can figure out how to discover the formula to find the area or the perimeter? That's induction. And this is why the scientists who discovers laws are in a vast minority, while everybody with minimal skills can apply those laws to find answers once a few geniuses have figured out how to induct it. So if you cannot induct, you cannot discover, you cannot create scientific laws. So deduction is not a big deal.
Okay, so I just want to touch on again the parallel and the connection with laws versus bylaws and people who try to act out the laws. The people who actually create fundamental laws, as defined, which is shown here, through law of induction versus the law of deduction. And then we're going to apply this. So we're seeing the Morse paradigm, the Morse connection. We're going to apply this to the Meta 4 and how this all relates to the Meta 4 and modern day today, things that we can practice today in regards to spiritual practices and how we can apply this like literally till today. Okay.
So to go through the writings of the Greeks, we find that they lampoon induction. They distrusted induction. Why? Because they didn't know how to do it. In the entire history of the Greeks, there is not one single, example of them arriving at anything through induction. Means they have not created and invented anything. Oh, you might be saying, but what about the Greeks of Alexandria? Well, we come to that. That's total legend. This is why the Greeks, 1,000 years under the Cretans, couldn't even come up with a writing system, even though the Cretans, the Cretans, showed them their own linear script. Eventually, the Greeks had to settle for the African Canaanite, so-called Hebrew alphabet, not alphabet, alphabet. When you read my book out of Greece, you get much more details about that. And the only time the Greeks supposedly, did something great was when it came to Alexandria, around 300 BC. But we will look into that. Let's talk about Greek in numeracy. Now we find that the Greeks have a numeracy problem. What do I mean by that? They didn't have a numerical symbolism. Chinese had numerical symbols. The Aztec and the Mayas had numerical symbols. The Egyptians had numerical symbols. Sumerians, the Cretans had it. A numerical symbol is a symbol that allows you to do calculations in your mind, to manipulate figures abstractly, do mathematical calculations. When the Greeks wrote numbers down, they used alphabetical characters, alphabetical symbols. You see that? A was 1, B was 2, C was 3. So they would write on A plus B equals C. You see, you're not manipulating a numerical symbol here. And that was a problem. So when they had to do calculations, they had to put pebbles on the sand. Okay? And of course, the Greek word for pebbles is calculi. And that's where the word calculation comes from. Yes. And of course, today, when we use pebbles or beans or marbles or whatever, they call that using manipulative devices that we use to teach young children mathematical concepts. Well, that's where the Greeks were. Look at that. Let's go further into Greek university. Now, Pythagoras, a Greek, okay, has been credited by Western history to have discovered the secrets of the right angle triangle, and it's called the Pythagorean theorem. And to this day, young people are taught that in grade school and college even, when these professors know that the Sumerians were using the so-called Pythagorean theorem, okay, over 1,000 years before Pythagoras. The Chinese were using it. The Egyptians were using it. They used it as a major calculation in the building of the Great Pyramid of Khufu and all of those pyramids. There's also Cairo papyrus showing some 40, problems given to students to find the value of the hypotenuse. That's sorry. This is this side here, the hypotenuse here. And the formula there is that we square, this side, which is 3, and we add it to the square of this side. Okay, we get 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, plus 4 squared, which is 16. And we add that up, we get 25. And the square root of 25 is 5, which equals the length of the hypotenuse. And this supposedly is what Pythagoras made famous for the Greeks. But then a student came to Pythagoras and said, Master, if the length of this side is 1 and the length of this side is 1, then I will have 1 squared plus 1 squared equals 2. And the square root of 2 is 1.41 plus an unending series of decimals. And since we're using pebbles, we cannot have an unending number of pebbles or fractions of pebbles. So the story goes that Pythagoras threw the poor fellow overboard. And then now they call it an absurdity, meaning that you cannot have a reality numbers that absurd numbers like that, numbers that have an unending number of decimals. And so therefore the whole theory was abandoned, was never taught again in Greece. Interesting. And it's interesting to know that Pythagoras never built anything with this knowledge. He spoke about it, but they built absolutely nothing. That's because they really couldn't work with numbers. Pythagoras is celebrated as one of the greatest minds of antiquity. Okay? Now Pythagoras started to teach at the age of 50. He was educated in Egypt. He went to Egypt in his early 20s. And he stayed here studying for about 30 years. And he went to all the different, temples. This is very well documented. He never used the Pythagorean theorem, even though the Chinese, the Egyptians used it in architecture and all kinds of, industrial components and things of that nature. Pythagoras created, is celebrated for the harmonic theory, and when you apply it, to come up with a scale that has 22 different tones. Look at that. The tones that we use in this day has 12 tones to the octave. His octave will have 72 tones. A totally unusable practical scale. Yet he celebrated the great man. Now let's go back to his education. He was quite comfortable staying in Egypt, studying, being initiated into the mysteries, and then he was captured by the Persians when the Persians invaded and conquered northern Egypt, and was taken as a slave to Persia. And of course, he, impressed the Persian with the knowledge acquired in Egypt, and was therefore able to get freedom. Then he went to Greece, taking the knowledge that he gained in Egypt and in Persia, and began to teach the Greeks this knowledge. Yet, whatever he taught the Greeks, they call it Greek knowledge. My goodness, if somebody came to America and studied all the Latin America and then go to Brazil to teach, you cannot call that Brazilian knowledge, but call it American knowledge. I mean, this is just their logic. These are the games that these Western scholars play. Democritus. He imagined that if you took a drop of water and cut it in half, and you took that and cut it in half, and so forth, imagining it. Is that inducting? If you keep reducing a drop of water smaller, you will get to the point where you must arrive at a drop of water the size of which you cannot go any further, because you can imagine that water will go into nothing. You will end up with an irreducible, unit of water, which you call an atom or atom. You see that. But Democritus was not a Greek that studied in Egypt, and this idea of an irreducible reality is what we call the Kemetic divine principle of Atum or Temu. You see that? But in Egypt, that irreducible principle is not energy and matter unit, but it is the non-energy, non-material reality that we call consciousness, which is the foundation of all manifestation. But for this absurd idea that you could arrive at an irreducible material unit, the market which has been shattered because they have split the atom, they found that there are all kind of energy particles beneath the contours of that. And it's still trying to figure out, they have lost count. So for this absurdity, the Democritus is now called the father of antiquity. Plato, one of the greatest minds we have told in Western philosophy, Western schools. Let's go to the academy. What was the basic idea of having in Greece and its academy? Empirical observation was discouraged. They preferred theories to observation. So observation is the cornerstone of the scientific method. See that? So here, if you go in and study Plato, you will find that the Greeks themselves are saying, we're not scientific. We don't value observation. We cannot trust your senses. Theories, working with theories, you see that, are pure realities. They considered induction inferior to deduction. In other words, if I give it E equals mc squared, if I give it a mass and speed of the front, then you can find the energy of it and you can take it to the back. Okay? Anybody can do it. But very few people can induct. Very few people can come and tell you, I discovered a new law of science. You see that? But because few people were geniuses, few people knew how to induct, he thought it was inferior. No induction, no scientific discovery. Now we understand why the Greeks, fell behind. Theories were more important than facts. The rhetoric more important than the content. That's what we get today. Okay? People prefer rhetoric more than the content. We see that also in literature. Style, how you write to express yourself. But what are you talking about? The same with garbage. There's current arithmetic. Why? Because of in America. They didn't have the number system. You see that.
So you see it came back right around to today. And that's where I wanted to touch on is today.
Yeah.
What this all means for today. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. What so coming back full circle right to today. So I wanted to touch on something here. Let's see. Okay, this is from here. We're going to get back into today and deduction and induction. We're going to bring it back all full circle, but we're going to go back again. We're going to go back again a little bit, and then we're going to bring it right back to today, okay, and how this all connects. So, the research conducted in humanistic paleontology, particularly by the late Dr. Louis Leakey, has helped to place the birthplace of humanity, now check this out, okay, in East Africa's Great Lakes region, around the Omo Valley. Two ramifications that have not been sufficiently emphasized until now have come to light as a result of this research. Humankind born around the Great Lakes region, almost on the equator, is necessarily pigmented and black. They're saying black. The Glogger law calls for warm-blooded animals to be pigmented in hot and humid climate. All other races derived from quote-unquote black race by the more or less direct affiliation, and the other continents were populated from Africa at the Homo erectus, Homo sapiens stages 150,000 years ago. The old theories that used to state that quote-unquote blacks came from somewhere else are now invalid. So I just want to talk about a few cycles here. So this is big because first we were talking about just about 10,000 years BC and people traveling from Northeast Africa. Now we're talking about 150,000. That's a long, long difference migrating and populating the Africa or the world. Just so you know, there's even further back. This goes back millions of years in which this earth was populated, which goes back to support. So people think, oh, there's contradiction here in regards to saying the origin of people and civilization started in Africa, but then how about the Americas? What was happening? So I'm trying to show you that there was the Americas, and then you see there were cycles, and there's things were happening in Northeast Africa as well. So we're talking about 10, 15,000 years ago earlier, people migrating on Northeast Africa, populating the world. Now this book is saying 150,000. And better believe there's also a cycle of millions of years as well. So don't think it's contradictory, it's cycle. It's cycle. So you can understand that there were cycles of for lack of a better word, evolution and civilization and things of this nature. There were cycles of it. Okay, let's talk about 150,000 years ago.
Well, somebody was just asking what page you're on.
Sorry, this was Chikante Diop, Civilization of Barbarism. That was that was right from the introduction, page 11. And okay, from this book, Egypt versus Greece, by Molefi Kete Asante Ama Mazama. Sorry, this one says, right here it says, this is quoting Diop. So you see, we have the books, then the reference books, and we keep going. As Diop indicates in the introduction to Civilization of Barbarism, this book here he's talking about, his final and most powerful work, his theory of the African origin of civilization is grounded in the idea that all cultures have a continuity that can be traced back to an original African origin. The African origin of civilization is important because it relates to the development of human approaches to culture and survival of the human species. As we were referring to, deduction and induction, two basic forms of logic, or groups of logic.
And for people who don't know or never heard, but there was archaeological research done that there's parts of the continent over there under America over here.
Exactly.
If you're confused as to where Africa is, when you hear people say Africa, and you automatically think across the Atlantic Ocean over there, there's parts of Africa under America.
Because we're all one, and there was civilization and there was population across the globe when it was one, known as Atlantis. Absolutely. And I wanted to touch on this earlier about Atlantis. which leads me to feel personally, and from some of the studies I've done, but I don't have the books right here, that there was more than one Atlantis. There was more than one part of the Earth, Pangea, that was highly civilized that went into the Earth. So I'm sure there was a part that happened in the Atlantic Ocean. There's the Mediterranean, as we saw here in Crete. I believe also in Bermuda, down in that area. So I believe there were other parts as well.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's interesting because you were just saying that now. I'm open to the page where it says the oldest writing in the New World was discovered in Mexico, not Egypt, in Mexico. Okay. The Olmec has been described as a mother culture, which gave birth to the other original Mesoamerican civilizations, including the Maya and the Aztec. So here it says, as with other continents, the mounds and the pyramids of North America vary greatly. It is difficult to determine how many mounds were built in North America, for many have been destroyed by modern civilization, but there are many. 150 years ago, for example, there were approximately 20,000 Indian mounds in Wisconsin alone, with a large portion of them alongside the Mississippi River. Now, after a century of plowing, town construction, and urban sprawl, there are less than 2,000 mounds remaining in Mississippi. As anyone who was in the area in 1927 will tell you, the Mississippi floods, regular flooding, replenishes the soil in this region and makes it rich. This is the same reason the ancient Egyptians lived alongside the Nile. In fact, the similarities between the Mississippi and the Nile, floods and pyramids, caused the original settlers of Illinois to name new towns after places in Egypt, such as Goshen, Cairo, and Thebes. Over 200,000 ancient pyramids and huge mounds of the earth in the shape of cones, animals, geometric designs can still be found from the southern coast of America right up to Canada. These structures were built by people known as the mound builders. They were dark-skinned, woolly-haired, black, quote-unquote blacks who were indigenous, native to North America and kin to the Olmecs of South Central America, which, as we learned earlier, came directly from Kemet. There are mounds, teku, and pyramids all over the earth on every continent. So seeing some connection there. So you see they carried the knowledge of induction over deduction and just basic Kemetic science and more science. It's showing you when we studied and looked in Greece just specifically and understood what it meant to learn in regards to philosophy, induction, deduction. This is the science that built the pyramid, the knowledge from Atlantis, from Thoth, that carried on to the mound and so on and so on. And even before the pyramids, the mounds were being built right here. Okay, right in Scarborough. Okay, so another thing here. Okay, so that was from, we'll go over the books after at the end. So this is another thing to we're going to get into the modern, but I wanted to, again, just emphasize the power of Kemet. Okay, check this out. This is from the Book of Beginnings, A Book of Beginnings by Gerald Massey. There's 3 volumes, I believe, 2 or 3 volumes of this book. This is volume 1. Page 40. Okay, here we go. In Egypt, if anywhere, says Diodorus, the most accurate observations of the position of the movements of the stars have been made. Of each of these, they have records extending over an incredible series of years. They have also accurately observed the courses and positions of the planets and can truly predict eclipses of the sun and the moon. Diogenes Laertius states that they possessed observations of 373 solar eclipses and 832 lunar. These were probably total or almost total. The Egyptians spanned spaces so vast that nothing short of astronomical cycles could be the measure of record of time and period for them. Plato, who spent some 13 years in Egypt, I believe you might say 30, in Egypt, trying to get into the penetralia of their knowledge, reports that they had divine hymns or songs worthy of the deity, which were held in round numbers to be 10,000 years old. Tell us he tells us that he does not speak figuratively, but that they are real and credible figures. Okay, we're talking about cycles of 10,000 plus years. Okay. So that was ancient. Now we want to get into a bit of modern and understand. Okay, first deduction. What does it mean, deduction and induction? So we're just going to read on that just a touch. Induction. Induction is when I observe that a number of things share the same property or quality, and I therefore conclude that this generality can be applied to all known or unknown things and events that can be placed in category generality. I am inducting. For example, I observe that 100 different substances that I am working with are heated, they expand, and therefore conclude that all other substances that share in the same attributes must expand when heated under the same conditions. I have proceeded by observing a number of different things, exhibiting a common property that conclude that all such things will have in the same manner as stated. We must be careful with the inductive process. So we must be careful with the inductive process, okay? And as he said, induction is just for the average. It's people who take things and just apply it. The theories and laws and apply it. Now, deduction. Deduction proceeds in the opposite direction of induction. It is the taking of a generalization and arriving at a conclusion about a member of the general class, a specific. Let's use the most used example of the process. All humans are mortal. Socrates is a human, and therefore Socrates is mortal. It can be reduced to the formula. If A equals B and B equals C, then C equals A. This example is used very often because it exemplifies that in logic is referred to as a good argument. An argument is good if the conclusion legitimately follows from the premises and that premises are true. In the above example, the premises are considered true. Premise number 1, all humans are mortal. And premise number 2, Socrates is human. The conclusion drawn from the relationship between the two premises is valid. Logical deduction of this form has been used incorrectly to show the superiority of deduction over induction. But we have already seen in an inductive generalization on the speed of sound that this is not true. Okay, so the literature is full of deductions made by scientists and scholars from assumptions and hypotheses. For example, Black people with thick lips and flat noses are Negroes. Denzel Washington, famed actor, is Black, but does not have thick lips and a flat nose. Therefore, he is not a Negro. If that conclusion is valid, or one of the statements is not true, then we can say the same about ancient Egyptians. They need not all have thick lips and flat noses to be quote-unquote Negroes. Travel to Africa and you will find many people that are unmistakably quote-unquote Negro or Negroid features, yet do not have the stereotypical flat nose, thick lip, and even in the Sudan, where the Cushites and Nubians still live. Of course, no Black person is a Negro in the derogatory sense. But that is a different story. So you see that now he's getting into some of the more political aspect. Mm-hmm. Yet again, that's what the Egyptians call themselves. Okay, they call themselves Kama. Okay. So we can see that deduction is subject to the same vagaries or definitive as induction, according to the nature of things or event reasoned above, or the event reasoned above. Okay, so now we want to get into modern stuff now. So as he was saying today, that's what. So then we're gonna get into this one here. Okay, so over time, through the law of induction and deduction and passing on sciences, okay, we came to pass on the Kemetic spiritual systems as we talked about. So the key to all of this in regards to what I do month to month, to kind of bring it into what we do here, is to make it what's practical. So in the Meta 4, okay, it speaks on the laws. So as we're talking about the laws, so this speaks on the 11 laws in which you can take any aspect of your life or situation of life and apply it. And you do it month to month to help you through whatever it is in life that's going on. Okay, so this is starting now, February 21st. Okay, so I want to, 1 second here. Okay, perfect. So you see here the partner to root. This is another version. Oops, sorry. This is it. So this is this here. Okay, this is the tree of life. Okay, so these are the 11 laws. These were the 11 laws. Okay, here's Tahuti, Todd. Here's how they should. Here's how they put our stuff right in front of us. Okay, anyway, sorry. So this is where I want to get to here. So the Padnataru, the tree of life, represents the 11 faculties or laws of the spirit that controls man's mind and life force. Note that the first faculty, amen, is not shown as it is above the tree of life. The 11th faculty down here, Geb, is made up of the 10 faculties that make up the life force. Okay, so why is this important? Okay, you have the life force right here. So we'll go to the top. You meditate on the following to anchor your mind, the role that reasoning plays in the empowerment of the will, replacement of faith. So empowerment of the will versus the replacement of faith. Induction versus deduction. Okay? So now what? You are the initiator. This is the will. You are the initiator of all events in your life. You have been granted this privilege by God. Give thanks. Image. Your will must be expressed through an image of the desired goal, the end result. The image invokes and guides the life force. Okay? Joy. The image of your achievement must be joyful. Joy energizes and empowers the image. Life force is controlled by the image and in turn governs the manifestations in your body and in your social environment. The Chinese call the life force Qi, an image of Yi. Reasoning about the above sequence gives conviction to the expression of the will to achieve things in the manner shown. So this is science through over time. You know that the will, you are the initiator of all lives in your event. This is a law that can't be touched, moved, compared. You know what I mean? We can apply this law. Okay. So willpower and reasoning. In his best-selling book on success, Psycho-Cybernetics author Maxwell Maltz states that an image of what a person wants that is held in the mind long enough will work towards its manifestation as an actuality in the world. This is an important retelling of an ancient truth, but it is only partially true. An image is an object, a form, a particle that serves as a guide to the life force, which is the motive energy behind the manifestation of effects in the world. The voluntary manifestation of effects in life takes place through 4 components, as we just saw. The will, which initiates the movement of the mind. The image, which guides the life force to its end. The enjoyment of the end result indicated by the image, it enlivens the life force, and the conviction that the end will be attained. Okay, so as we were seeing here, the will, the image, the joy, and then the life force, okay, which is the conviction. Now, what does this mean? So we have 11 laws. So with the 11 laws, it's here. Sorry, 1 second. I lost the page. Just give me 1 second so I can find the page. So as I'm looking for the page, I'll just talk a little bit about it. So the will initiates the movement of the mind. So you will yourself, okay? You will yourself to meditate on one of the laws, okay? And you imagine, something specific to the law. You feel the enjoyment that emanates from it. And the result is the outcome of what you are imagining, the conviction. This is the focus and the basis of of this. Okay, and this was the basis and the focus of the Kemetic spiritual system. Okay, so you meditate, and I was just looking for the urges. So, okay, I'll just give for an example, a paraphrase of it. So, like for example, there's 11 urges that come through to us that we need to essentially honor. The first one is everyone has the urge to be at peace, to be. So I want right. The second one I want to find is everyone has the urge of the truth to be one with everything, right? And only through these laws, only through meditating on these laws, at the right time of the year, can you truly manifest the outcome that you want, okay, by doing so. So, for example, here we go. A lot of books are here, guys. Be a little patient with me. I'm sitting on 20 books going through pages. I lost the page. I lost one of the pages. But you know what? I've got to scrap the whole other one. We spoke on it again. It's the 11 laws. So actually, it's the 11 laws. And just trying to find it here. Here we go. Okay, so the 11 laws. You were made in the image and likeness of a peace that nothing can disturb. Reclaim your peace that you may attain the reasoning for coming to existence, the enjoyment of life. So once again, we're talking about the enjoyment. So you see these 11 laws, when you meditate on them at the right time, they get put into from the subconscious mind and put into the conscious mind. Asir, your nature is an unconquerable peace, therefore nothing or no one in the world can be against you. All experiences come to you to prove your reclamation of peace, that you may in turn acquire wisdom and power. Okay. When all your thoughts, feelings, and actions reflect the word of God, then the power of God's spirit and peace that nothing can challenge will flow through your being. That's the Tahuti. Okay, so this is from the Ma'at, 11 laws of God. Okay. So I know we covered a lot today, and it's been a long time, so I don't want to keep going on too much. We can go on for hours, but I wanted to summarize. I want to answer any questions, right? So we spoke on, a lot of things today. We touched on some pretty powerful points. You can take those points and you can start to connect them and get into a lot, each one in itself. Like there's so much that you guys can discuss and get learn from. But I wanted to essentially get the main point was of civilization, ancient civilization, how Greece, essentially Greece versus Egypt, correcting history, looking at multiple cycles of civilization from North, South, Central America, right to Kemet, and how Kemet is basically a colony. America and Kemet are just colonies of each other, and the concept of induction and deduction, and how laws you can apply hundreds and hundreds of situations or aspects of life to a few fundamental laws. Okay, and how that law of deduction and induction essentially is the science, more science, Kemetic science, and we're passed on now to use something like this book that has the spiritual system. Okay, so I want to open the floor to any questions as I just kind of go over a few more things in my books, and I want to show everybody the books again in the next little bit. So is there any questions? Let's just have a look here.
Anybody in the YouTube chat got any questions? You could just put them in all caps and we'll read the questions out.
Yeah, I will be posting. Someone asked for a book list. I will post a book list. I'm going to go through the books and just show them. I want to give an example about this stuff, like how, like a more specific example of applying these things. So, in February 21st, we're going to be doing the law of the man. We start with the law of the man. In the law of the man, we see here, we experience the influence of the nectar of men as a desire for peace. So these things come through us. These are laws that can't be changed. The desire can only be satisfied through the law of a man. The goal of a man's law is to nurture peace through the understanding and experience that it is our natural response to challenges. Peace is the natural response to our challenges. So what we want to do, starting February 21st, a second. Okay, so you go into meditation. Okay, you visualize a situation in which you are in the habit of reacting emotionally: anger, fear, worry, lust, etc. It could be a thought that triggers the emotion, a person, an event, an animal, anything. Okay, so you go into meditation after, now, as we said earlier, remember the meditation position, proper meditation position. You go into meditation for about 8 minutes or so, and you envision. So you have the will. So you will yourself to do the meditation, to sit in the right manner. You're imagining. Okay, you're imagining the breath. You're imagining the belly going in and out, as we spoke about it last class. Okay, you're imagining this. Now you're imagining yourself. Okay, you visualize your person, your situation in which you are in the habit of reacting emotionally. One specific situation. Okay, and the person and everything. Then you repeat the law. So you imagine yourself, like it says your word, it could be words, right? And you say to yourself, I am that which perceives all around and within me, yet no one could perceive that I am. Okay? So you imagine that law of a man. That's a variation of the law of the man. Or another variation, I am made in the image of unconquerable peace that nothing can destroy. Okay, so you're imagining yourself in the middle of something, then you're telling yourself, I'm made of an unconquerable peace, and then you visualize your person now acting in a manner that gives evidence that you're at peace. So just being at peace, something that would normally make you so angry or get you upset, you upload the law that I am made of an unconquerable peace, and then you imagine yourself being at peace and feeling the joy that emanates from that. Now you do that for another 10 minutes. What you're doing is uploading a new software into your hardware, into the brain and the body. The software being the law, I am made of unconquerable peace. The hardware being the brain and the body. So now you're uploading it. So now when that situation happens, when you're in front of that person and everything, it's going to become that much less likely for you to be anything but peaceful. And you keep practicing that for the month, the law of a man. Okay, so there's a very specific example of how we can use laws that we're using laws such as the law of the man or the 11 laws of Mahat, okay, to change something in your life. So all this stuff that we're talking about, the sciences of induction, deduction, history of science, how we can use it today, literally and very practically. Okay, and we're going to be starting February 21st. So get your book. This is one of the books. I'm going to go through the books now. If there's any more questions, please hit me up now because we're going to go through the books and then that's it. So this is the book. If you want to get a copy, hit up my DM or Canaanland Moore's IG as well. And you can get books through there. We can get a photocopy version of it, a binded version, and then you'll get added to a WhatsApp group. That's for people who have the book and are practicing. So you'll get support month to month on each of the laws. So this is one of the books we're reading today. Here's another one. Sorry, there you go. Here's another one. Georgia. It's all books, not one piece of Google search or anything. Okay? Not one. I didn't go online for nothing. These are all books and reference books, and even some of the books I was reading reference some of my books. Some of the other books I had, and I had both. I had both of them. And I have a Greece. I think I got this one, but just a big book, so I'll do it again. This is a big one. This is one of the key books right here that help connect all the different ones. Okay. As you can see, it ain't one or two books. Okay, we use the laws of induction and deduction, so cross-referencing, that all applies. That all applies.
Gotta have a library, yo.
Yeah, this is just not even one row. Not even one row. But yeah, there's so much more, man. We're literally barely scratching the surface on any of this stuff. I just wanted to kind of do a full circle, kind of touch on some big aspects, and then come back around to just focus back on the metaphor, which is what we're normally doing here. But there's so much. We didn't even scratch the surface on some of this stuff.
Right and exact, though.
Yeah, respect.
Surface not even scratched, and still got something crazy done. Especially with the beginning, having to go through all the BS to get the message out.
Oh, nothing can stop it.
Yo.
The will, man. You're the initiator of all events in your life.
Straight.
And this is the thing, man. The whole idea in the beginning is talking about deductive and inductive reasoning. It can't be emphasized enough.
Yeah. To
understand that through inductive reasoning and mostly deductive, it just shows how much knowledge we have at our fingertips. We can apply a million different scenarios in our life to some basic fundamental laws. Love, truth, peace, freedom, justice being the core, right there. You know, the 11 laws of Mahan. It's all right there at our fingertips, literally, and we have access to anything ancient wisdom that's 150,000 something years. We have it right at our fingertips.
Yes, Lord.
A lot more. Is there any more questions?
No, there was no more. That was it.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So give thanks again, yo. We like those ones because that means the word got out properly.
Yeah, exactly.
The word was clear. If they don't got questions, word was clear.
Yeah.
Peace to everybody who joined in.
Give thanks for the space and time, fam. Always. And next month again, first Tuesday of the month. We're going to be focusing next month. We're going to focus specifically, and month to month now. We're going to be, unless there's any special kind of things, we're going to just be focusing on this right here. Every month, we're going to focus on one law every month. And we're going to be doing meditation. Okay. All right, more enough respect.
Yo, give thanks. Hail up the fam.
Always, man. Always give thanks. For
peace and love to everybody out there.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for tuning in. It's a big one.
Yeah.
I think Kemet won.
Yeah, definitely.
Kemet won again. Yeah, study. That's right. And work it out. You know? All right.
Study and apply. All right. Peace and love, Morris.
Peace and love, Morris. Yeah.
Yeah, Morris. Yeah. What you said? In a minute. Been a minute. Everything's good, yo. We're here. Just finished with KTS. Going in. Oh yeah, if anybody knows. You guys ever hear me tell the story about the studio we used to go to, had a library in it? There's the brother right there, Neil Singh. Library with a studio. Beating us with it when we were dumb niggers. You had no choice. Go in there and pick up something. You're there, pick up something. You gotta read something. Yeah, I'll send it to you on I'll send it to you after I shut this down. But yeah, we had some issues, so I'll actually send you the Instagram link because we had some. They played around with the stream a little bit. They were killing the stream. They were killing it. But we got it done. We got it done on Instagram. Well, happy Pale History Month to all. Don't forget black means pale. Just remember, the etymology of black is pale. So you're celebrating Pale History Month. We'll build soon, yeah. Peace to all the Moors worldwide. Honors to all the mothers. And honors to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the man whose name they never mention during Black History Month. Why? Because he's not pale. Peace and love to all the Moors. Islam.